You've heard about management by objective. Stay tuned. This is Andy McCaskey from SDR News, introducing the host of our show, Larry Pendergrass. Larry, how are you doing today?
Hi, very well, Andy. Thanks.
Okay, well, you know, there's probably no term that gets bandied about or has been bandied about over the past 35 or 40 years other than management by objective. You're going to take a close look at that today, huh?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about we'll try to add some clarity if we can today. So let me start by saying management by objective means that you'd like to avoid describing the how and instead try to help people understand what needs to be done and give them some freedom, some autonomy to decide how to get from point A to point B.
So it's really the end goal, not necessarily describing how to get there.
Exactly. You'd like to do what you can to not give the complete method, but liberate people to do some thinking on their own and be a little bit creative about how they get to where they need to go.
Okay, so that's how you picked out this particular code word then for it to describe the tenet.
That's right, exactly. It is liberating to manage by objective rather than manage in the other way. That's the antithesis, which is managing by directive.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I think in the military we would often speak of mission-oriented orders, and is this the same thing?
I think it's pretty close to the same thing. Having not actually been in the military, although I've worked in a military research lab, it's a little different than being in a command control environment, I think, like much of the military.
Yeah.
But mission-oriented objective setting, I think, is a very good term.
Yeah. So what cautions would you recommend or ask people to think about in a management by objective environment?
Yeah, and maybe cautions, and I can describe a few benefits as well. Let's start with some of those cautions. You need to really have some very clear goals. If you're going to paint a picture of where you'd like people to go, that should be a pretty good picture. You need to help people have the same kind of vision that you have. So having clear goals is extremely important, but you also really need to know the limitations of your people. It's sort of the Goldilocks syndrome, or the place where you really want to play when it comes to management by objective, is to make sure that you haven't given something too hard or something too easy to people. Some things that are too easy for people, they're not going to feel empowered nearly as much. And if it's too hard, then people are afraid of failure, may fail in a way that is catastrophic. So you need to find that, you need to understand the limits of your people. And as you'll also learn that you need to develop your people more as well in this kind of environment.
Are you trying to issue a challenge with the hopes that they'll come up with a creative solution to that?
Well, that's an interesting way to think about it. I suppose that's true to some degree. You have to be careful how you use the word challenge, because again, what you're really trying to do is get people to stretch and grow, but at the same time, you're trying to generate more interesting solutions. One thing that's really different about a management by objective environment than one that's a management by directive is, in an objective environment, you tend to generate more creative solutions other than the ones that the leader thinks about. You empower the entire workforce to be starting to think for themselves more and to add to the creative solution. Otherwise, I just get what I'm smart enough to think about.
Yeah. What are some of the benefits as far as how do people react to this?
If this is handled properly, people can react very strongly. Positively. I have been in a situation before where I started a management by objective process in a situation where the culture had not been used to it, and I learned from that quite a bit. That you do need to make sure that there's a change management process necessary here, Some people will accept it right away and see it as something that they've been waiting for. Others may actually be in a situation where they're not ready to accept it. They have been told what to do for a very long time, and they'll still feel that in their comfort zone is being told what to do. So you may have to lead them along the way to understand the value of management by objective.
So what you're trying to do is kind of balance between results and retention with some of the other factors that might be in the mix.
Exactly. Yes, and so you can get much better, more creative, and stronger results this way, and you will be able to retain your people more if they believe that you have their best interest and their growth at heart, and are interested in seeing solutions that they would provide. It's important to monitor, though, fairly carefully in the beginning as you're bringing people into a management by objective environment, and make sure that you're not changing those objectives too frequently either. You need to be able to allow for to see the results.
What if you find that the right things just are not getting done? What then?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing you should always do when you see something that's not being done the way you'd like it to happen is you have to ask yourself whether the issue is with motivation or it's with ability, because your approach is going to be very different to solving those problems depending on which of those two it is. If it's a motivational issue, meaning that either they don't have the right priority or they're not that interested in doing this, you may have a different conversation than if somebody just simply doesn't have the ability. And by the way, sometimes motivation or ability problems might get masked by motivation, because people may not try because they're worried that they cannot succeed. And it's really an ability issue, not a motivational issue.
Yeah. But sometimes you have to kind of get in the directive mode. How do you know when to do that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I should mention that whether you go into the directive mode or not, and sometimes that has to be done because of the stakes, because you may be truly the smartest person in the room, and because of the time frame associated with it. In those cases, you need to pull out that golf club, that particular golf club that has to do with being directive, and use that. But it's typically at times when, in my experience, in the regular business world, it's overused rather than underused, people being directive. So I'll give you an example of a time when I had to be directive. I had two teams that were working on two different types of projects, and they each wanted to come to use two different types of operating systems. We simply did not have the people to support two different operating systems. One group wanted to use Linux for very good reasons. One group wanted to use CE for very good reasons. WinCE. After going back to the drawing board multiple times and asking them to come up with a solution themselves without me stepping in and making that decision, it was some time before I finally said, we're out of time. We've got to make a decision. Come educate me and I'll make a call. And it turned out the only real bad call was going to be not just to delay this decision, because we could shore up the decision depending on which one we went with, either with more resources or a different approach. But we just needed to make a decision, and at some point you just got to say, we're done. We have to go.
What recommended reading would you have on this particular topic?
Well, there's some great writings out there about general management styles and management by objective in particular. There are actually two that I'd suggest that are really good for you to take a look at. I've got them both here. One is Bill and Dave by Michael S. Malone. He has done a tremendous job in writing about the early years of Hewlett-Packard and about management by objective. In addition, Dan Pink has written a great book on how to get the best out of in an innovative environment, and that book is called Drive. He talks specifically in there about creating an environment of autonomy, of mastery, where people are growing in mastery, and having a sense of purpose. Both great books.
Nothing from the Bernstein Bears this week?
Not this week.
What are we going to be looking at in our next in the 10 Tenets series?
Next week, we're going to be talking about enabling your people.
Okay, excellent. All right, thanks very much. We look forward to talking with you, and thank you for joining us on 10 Tenets of Leadership.
Great. Thank you, Andy.